You're tuned to KSQM 91.5 SQM.
It's Gardening with Ciscoe. Dust off your trowels and connect your garden hoses. It's time for an hour of cultivated fun. Let's join Sassy Susan as she welcomes Ciscoe Morris.
And good morning, Ciscoe. How are you today?
Hey, I'm great. Happy New Year, Sassy.
Happy New Year. Can you believe it's 2021? Oh, my gosh.
I know. I don't believe it either.
Did you and Mary have a wild New Year's Eve?
Well, we had kind of, we timed taking the pups out for a walk to the wrong time, and all of a sudden fireworks started going off all over, and Izzy ended up sleeping. She's a 47-pound dog between our pillows. She was rolled up in a little ball between our pillows with her paw right on my face all night long, but she was calm and happy, so all is well.
Well, I know I didn't realize that the fireworks were going off. Thor told me that the fireworks were going off because all of a sudden he started barking, and it's like, oh, there must be fireworks. But yeah, we had a real quiet night. You know, social distancing, me, my husband, and the dog. It was so romantic. But I just wanted to. I had to cough, so I needed to turn my mic off. Before we get started in the show, I did want to remind all the listeners, if you do live locally, that at 11 o'clock today, the wreaths that were placed at Squim View Cemetery off of Squim Dungeness, at 11 o'clock today, they're going to be picked up. So if you do want to stop by the cemetery and see those 577 wreaths that have been placed at the graves of all of the veterans, do it before 11 o'clock. And I will be giving more information later about how you can support the wreath program next for 2021. But I did want to mention that because between 9 and 10, people might be out doing errands and they could stop by and see it. I stopped yesterday, and it's very humbling, being a veteran myself, to see all of those wreaths with those red bows on them all over. Just, I took a couple of great pictures that might be posted on their Facebook page. But so that is what's going on. It was this, I couldn't even see the top of the mountains this morning. The clouds were covered, but we do have more snow on the mountains. And it is 44 degrees here in Squim right now, and it's supposed to rain all day. What's the weather like in Seattle?
Oh, rainy as could be, pretty windy, and just kind of all around nasty.
Yeah. Well, just a few minutes ago, I announced that the Port Townsend and Coupeville ferries had been canceled for the 8 o'clock and 8:45 because of high winds. That route, even though it's not real long, man, when the wind whips through there, it doesn't. It's a regular rodeo if you're on that ferry and the wind is blowing. So I need to keep appraised of what that goes on, of what's happening for people in the future for ferry rides this morning.
I used to take that ferry a lot when I was scuba diving in that area a lot, and I swear I got seasick on that thing once.
I know. It is amazing. Sometimes they have to cut back on the number of cars because they don't want to put cars too close to the front or the back because the waves splash in. And it's not plus it's a smaller ferry. So you really get a wild ride if the wind is blowing.
You do.
But let's get to gardening because this is Gardening with Ciscoe for Saturday, the 2nd of January. Wow. And so what's the intro topic that we're going to talk about today? We have a plant.
Okay.
I mean, we have a question that is along those same lines. So.
Oh, good. All right. Hey, and before I mention the topic, I just want to let people know if they go to my website, I've got a whole lot of things listed in upcoming events.
Uh-huh.
So So people can go click on Ciscoe.com, and then you could see all these different Zoom kind of talks that are out there for not much money at all. Like there's one from WSU. It's called their Growing Groceries series, and it's all about vegetable and fruit gardening. $5 to go, and the next one is January 6th, so it's easy to sign up. I've got links in there, and a really popular one is the Snohomish Master Gardener Winter Speaker Series, and I'm giving a talk on that one coming up pretty soon. I let's see, I should see when that is if I could quick find that, because February 5th, I'll be giving a talk called Hummingbird Madness, all about how to keep hummingbirds happy in your garden, and it's kind of a funny talk. It's a lot of fun. So they have a whole bunch of them. So I just want to let people know about, that those are out there. And there's a whole bunch more that very inexpensive and really good speakers and just terrific.
Who would have thought a year ago that we would be doing all this Zoom stuff? It never would have, No, it wouldn't have happened. So tell us about, so what's the, how do you say it? Hellebore? How do you say that?
Hellebore, yeah.
Hellebore, okay.
The botanical name is Helleborus, but we all call them hellebores. And these are what we call Lenten roses. So these things start blooming in February, and they bloom for 2.5 months at least, sometimes 3 months. They're wonderful harbingers of spring. They're poison, just so people know, but they're really beautiful plants. And
they're poison if you eat them?
Yeah, only if you eat them.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
And I've never seen a dog eat one, but the deer, they know. They don't mess with them.
Oh, so this is a good deer-resistant plant.
Oh, yeah, really good.
And they feed the hummers.
Plant. Yeah. Now, this one is not part of my hummingbird series.
Okay.
I've never seen a hummingbird go to one of these, so I'm not too sure.
All right, okay.
But here's the thing you have to do. Now, if they're for sale at all the nurseries, and they're just starting to flower. So if you buy them when they're in flower, you can get just the color you love. And I'll tell you what, these used to be so rare that the first time a double became available, I signed up at my local nursery to buy one. 2-year waiting list, and I paid $200 for this teensy little pot.
Oh my gosh!
So, yeah, but now they're a lot cheaper because they're hybrid and these things. There's so many doubles. There's so many beautiful. There's some that are upright flowers, some that are hanging down. And it's just no end to how cool they are. And but here's the key thing. You want to get out there and cut off all the old leaves as soon as you see the new leaves are starting to grow. And I just went out and looked at mine, and I got to get out and do this. Maybe I'll do it today. Mm-hmm. And I took a look, and all the new growth is starting. You want to get those old leaves off because they can cause disease.
Oh.
And they get in the way. You don't see the flowers as good.
Yeah.
So
okay.
And then give them a shot of organic fertilizer, but I'd wait till March to do that. And then just some good flower food. And I know there's a question about those, so I'll tell one other really cool thing when we talk about that question. But
all right.
These are great plants. So
yeah, I pulled it up on your website the other day, and when I got the questions to look at them, I thought, okay, what's the plant of the week? I mean, not the plant of the week, but what's the intro topic? And so I pulled them up, and they are very pretty. But before we go anywhere, so that people have plenty of time to call in at 360-681-0000. What is the only tree? Oh, now you're supposed to say this, not me. Okay, you're on.
All right. The Ciscoe Stumper for this week. This is a tough one, guys. You guys, so many of you got last week that I decided I'm going to stump the Tweedle out of you no matter what. Okay. what is the only tree on Earth believed to be able to produce over 1 trillion seeds in its lifetime? So that's one tree, in its lifetime will produce over 1 trillion seeds. So what is that tree? No fair looking on the web.
No fair Googling it. Okay, so
Googling this.
If you have if you would like to have us broadcast your suggestion, you can call 360-681-0000. And I was talking to a friend of mine last night in Minnesota, and maybe she knows the answer. Probably, she's not much of a gardener, but Jatter, you might give us a call, give us an idea. So give us a call, and Linda will answer the phone, and we will announce those questions on the air. All right, so...
You'll get extra prestige if you get this one right.
Well, I'm going to have to email my husband. He gave me an answer, and I can't remember what he said. So I'll have to send him a message and have him let me know. Okay, so the first question about hellebores. Did I say that right? Hellebores?
Hellebores.
Hellebores, okay. I planted some gorgeous Lenten rose hellebores last fall, and they bloomed beautifully from February into April, just like you said. You just said they bloom for 3 months. Now there are brown spots on the leaves that look like disease. Will this harm the plants, and is there anything I can do to prevent this? This is from Jana. What can we tell Jana?
Question. Okay, so Jana, here's the thing. Hellebores are highly susceptible to a fungus disease called botrytis. Now, most of the time it just spots the leaves. It's not the end of the world, but it doesn't look that great. But it can get on the flowers, and if you get the brown spots on the flowers, it wrecks the whole show. So that's why it's so important to cut the old leaves off right now. As soon as you see new growth start, you cut those old leaves off. You're taking all that botrytis and all the spores that are going to come from it off the plant, and you could stick those in your clean green and send them out your yard waste, But there is some kinds of hellebores. Some of the Lenten rose are more susceptible, or maybe it's where you're planting them where they don't have as good air circulation, whatever it is. And these guys want to go in bright shade. That's where they do the best. And I always plant my hellebores right by the walkway. These are plants you want to see close. You won't notice them way back in your garden bed. So you want to have them where people can really enjoy the great flowers. Now, if you've got one of these doggone hellebores that always just gets hammered with botrytis, you get brown spots, even if you cut off the old ones, there is a trick you can use. And that is, you got to go get lime chips. So, and lime chips are not easy to find. I'll tell you how I did it. But so you get lime chips, and you put them down about a ½ inch thick all around the plant, underneath the plant and around the root zone. And what it does is it makes the soil more alkaline, which these hellebores love, and fungus disease doesn't like. And the other thing it does, it covers the spores so they can't splash up and get onto the leaves. So it works really good. Now, here's the thing. Finding lime chips is really difficult.
Well,
I was lucky.
No, yeah. I was just going to say, when you said lime chips, all I can imagine is having limes, the fruit, and...
This is limestone chips.
Limestone chips, okay.
It's lucky you said that, Susan. I can see someone out there peeling their lime,
I'm going, what kind of lime? So limestone chips. Okay.
Limestone chips.
Okay, so everyone's had a laugh on me today.
You know what's funny? I was trying so hard. I couldn't figure out where to get those. Then I used to direct the grounds care at Seattle U, and we had athletic fields, and they had running tracks that we had to put special stone on for the runners. And so I went out to this place called Manufacturing Minerals in Renton, where they sell all kinds of stone. And lo and behold, I see a bag of lime chips sitting there, limestone chips, 125-pound bag. And so I wanted that, but I didn't want 125 pounds of those things. So I asked the guy, this place is like, it's kind of like along the railroad tracks and kind of seems like a mafia headquarters or something. So I asked this old guy that works there, I go, hey, I need some lime chips, but I don't want 125 pounds. Could I just buy a certain amount out of the bag? The guy looks at me, he goes, nope. You buy them and you take them, And I said, well, how much do they cost? The guy goes, $1.29 for the 125 pounds.
$1.29?
Yep. This was a long time ago.
Yeah.
But so I told the guy, I said, I'll tell you what, I'll pay you $5 and I'll just take the amount I want. Maybe somebody else will want the rest. The guy goes, $1.29, you take the whole bag, So I couldn't talk the guy to let me, so I paid $1.29 for a 125-pound bag of limestone chips, and I paid $50 to my chiropractor the next day because I could hardly walk after bringing that thing home.
Yeah.
So that's one place, Manufactured Minerals in Renton. It's the only place I know you can get them, but there may be other places out there. I've heard marble chips work, but I've never tried it. So.
Okay. So this is limestone chips, not lime.
Yep.
Okay.
Don't go out there and peel your lime over.
Oh, Ciscoe, we have too much fun. Let's get on to our next question. But before we do, if anyone out there is listening, what the Stumper question is, what is the only tree on Earth believed to be capable of producing over 1 trillion, with a T, trillion seeds in its lifetime? If you want to have us announce your answer, call 360-681-0000. Linda will answer the phone, and she might even ask you where you're calling from. It's kind of interesting to hear where our listeners are located. Okay, so this is from Catherine about her Japanese anemone. I would love any tips on removing Japanese anemone. Started with one established white variety and a big leaf maple when we purchased the home 7 years ago. Planted a white swan anemone with the original, which was okay for a few years. This doesn't flow very well. The big leaf maple fell 2 years ago and the stump is decomposing. The bed is in full sun now. The anemone is starting to take over the bed. She tried digging them out in the late winter 2020 with no luck. Can I cover with black plastic for a summer to kill the roots? Any other natural options I could try? So she wants to get rid of her Japanese anemone, it sounds like. It's taken over.
Catherine, I'm glad you asked this question because I have been trying to get rid of those doggone things in my garden for so long. They're absolutely lovely plants. They bloom in fall they have white ones and pink ones and a few other colors. They're absolutely lovely. They get about 3 feet tall, but they're absolutely impossible to eradicate from your garden. And so, the technique I use, and now you might be able to succeed with that black plastic idea you have. And if there's nothing growing there, other knows Japanese anemones, and there's nothing to lose putting black plastic over the area for the whole summer. It might work, but the problem is there's probably seeds in the ground. When you pull that black plastic off, I wouldn't be surprised if some of them germinate. But if you're on top of it and keep pulling them out, I think you might win the battle, or at least hold your own. In my garden, where they're all mixed in with my other plants, you know, I let them grow where I like them, and all summer long I pull them where I don't want them to come up. I have this pink one, and it's growing in amongst some really cool orange perennials. Oh, the combination is so bad. And they always wait to bloom until I have a big group coming to see the garden, and then boing, right in the middle of these orange things. So that's how I deal with them, and I have yet to meet anyone that's managed to eradicate them, you know, and you don't want to use a bunch of horrible poisons. It probably wouldn't work anyway, so try the black plastic, and you got to let Sassy and I know if it worked.
Yeah.
Sometime next year, because I'm really curious to see if that'll do the trick. But most of us aren't lucky enough to have a spot where we could do black plastic, you know.
Yeah, so
We'll try.
why would someone, if these are so invasive, why would someone put them in their yard? Because they're pretty and they don't know they're invasive?
Well, yeah, I'm asking myself that question because I did it. You know, nobody knew when I first planted them. That was so many years ago, probably 36 years ago in my garden. And I had used them in Seattle U too, and they're so lovely, and they're blooming right in the fall when hardly anything's blooming. They are the one thing I like about them is they are so indestructible. So I've learned at the university we put them in places where we couldn't grow anything, and they just did great. But yeah, the problem is, you know, they don't put a warning label on the plants at the nursery, and I hadn't heard a thing about these being so hard to eradicate when I first planted them 36 years ago. And now I think the word's out, but, you know, even now, a lot of people don't know it, you know, and there are a lot of plants that are out there. There's one called bishop weed, for instance, and it's Agapodium, and it grows in shade with this beautiful variegated foliage. And if that stuff gets a foothold in your garden, you'll never get it out, you know. It's so hard, and it can get in the lawn and grow in the lawn, and it's just terrible. And I was walking through a nursery the other day, and I saw this young couple putting a pot of that into their basket, into their little stroller thing. I went, take that out of there right now. Put it back on that shelf. And they didn't even know who I was. They're like, okay, you know. Then I saw them pointing at me, talking to one of the people that worked in the nursery later. But yes, they don't put warning labels on those things.
And the people at the nursery said, that's Ciscoe. You listen to what he says. That man knows what he's talking about.
I saw the guy was laughing really hard, the nursery person, so.
Okay, we've already had someone call in about the Stumper Question. What tree on Earth believed to be capable of producing over 1 trillion seeds in its lifetime? I had another cough. Mr. Patrick called and said that Janice says it's the cottonwood tree. Now, that's one suggestion that was sent in. And then we just had a call in, since we were talking about hellebores. Eileen from Port Angeles has a question about hellebores. She said that hers had some dark burgundy flowers, but after a few years they turned a sickly yellow-green, and it's planted on the north side. What's wrong? How can we help Eileen with her hellebore?
I am wondering, Eileen, if your hellebore died and seedlings took its place. That's one problem I forgot to mention about hellebores, and that is that they cross with each other all the time, and some of them seed like crazy, and some people love that because the seedlings come up if you got room and everything, and you might get a seedling that's way better than the one you bought with great color, but you never know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
So it could be that her original plant died, and now these are seedlings that are duds. And if were me, I'd dig them all out now. You're not going to get those to turn back to a beautiful color. and then go and buy one you really love again and start over. And then try not to let the seedlings get too big of a foothold. You know, I pull most of the seedlings around mine out when they're young. They're easy to pull then, a lot harder when they get bigger.
Okay. Well, Eileen is also, she must be a longtime listener because she also gave a couple of tips last week or the week before. We talked about mold destroyer, how you use, what is that, mint. And she said a good way to repel molds is to use a mold destroyer product and put it between the mounds. And you can buy it locally in Sequim. I cannot say any store, but you can look around. There's only a couple of options that you can look at. It has an extremely strong garlic smell, which moles hate. Be sure to wear gloves when handling it, and don't open it in the house or the garage, or you will be sorry.
Well, that stuff works on all the molds except for the Italian variety.
Oh, yeah, they love the garlic, I'm sure. Yeah, but it says it doesn't kill them. They simply leave the vicinity. So
that sounds good.
You know, rather than use your suggestion of the mint leaves, right? Mint?
Yeah.
The mold destroyer product. And then she's just full of information today.
Wow,
Eileen
cool.
says another tip is for people putting a fence in. Consider a walking measuring tool with a wheel. It makes it really easy to measure, and it's usually less than $10 and available locally. So if you have an area that you need to measure, you can get those wheels like you see, what's the word that I want? Not contractors, but people that are pacing out different lots of land. I've seen those along the road where you can measure so that you're...
We use those all the time at Seattle University.
Yeah.
And you know why? To measure the lawn.
That's right.
So you knew how much fertilizer to use.
You don't want to over-fertilize and you don't want to under-fertilize. You want it to be just right. That's right.
Yep, and they always tell you how far the stuff in the bagel covers, so it makes it really easy to figure out.
Yeah. Now, before we go to the plan of the week, my gosh, it's already 29 minutes past 9. I'm sure that a lot of people have gotten living Christmas trees. And so I know that we talked about this maybe a couple of weeks ago, but Cammie from San Diego. Yes, she might.
Oh my gosh!
I know she might get the prize for listeners today. I don't know. I've read all about the care and handling of the tree, but do you have any advice on how to make this living Christmas tree survive? Probably just get it outside. Don't keep it in the house. But any other suggestions?
Well, that's a really good suggestion because. And especially if Cammie, if she's from San Diego but is planting it around here for any reason, then it's really critical. You do not want a living Christmas tree to break dormancy in the house. And they'll do that if they're in the house for more than about a week. Then if they start to grow, then if you take it out and plant it in the winter garden, the tree goes, hey, I thought it was summer.
Yeah.
I'm freezing my little needles off, and that's not good. So if you're in San Diego, the key is going to be make sure it gets adequate water. That's going to be the really key thing. Put it in a sunny spot. Make sure you don't plant it any deeper than it came out of the pot. And watch your watering real careful until it has time to grow a good root system. Most conifers are drought tolerant, not all of them, but so you got to watch that. If it's around here, the key thing is to get that planted right away. This is the perfect weather right now to plant your living Christmas tree. Pop it in a bright sunny spot with well-drained soil, and Mama Nature will keep it watered till spring. If we get a dry spring, make sure it gets some water, and you should be off and running.
Yeah, it can cause a lot of problems if you keep those trees inside for too long for the reason that you just said. So get them outside. Christmas is over.
Yep. And one last warning. My next door neighbor across the street, I may have told a story, I don't know, but he got a living Christmas tree, and I remember when he got it. It was years and years ago. And I saw him out there planting it, so I went out and looked at it. I said, you know what kind of tree this is? And he goes, I don't know, it's some kind of pine. You know, I said, this thing is going to be like 80 feet tall. It is. It's out there. It's so big. He hates that tree. It shaded his whole garden. He didn't take my advice. I said, I don't think I'd plant that there if I were you.
Yeah,
So
you have to make sure you read the labels as far as how the shape that a tree is going to have and how tall it's going to be.
Yeah. Otherwise, you're going to have it shading your whole garden. Maybe it's going to go over the roof and cause mold. You don't know what's going to happen. So be careful.
Be careful. Okay, well, already it's time for the plan of the week. What's our plan of the week this week?
It's really a great plant. Now, I didn't put in a hummingbird one this week, but I will next week. I was waiting for it to start to bloom, but I should have gone and looked yesterday because I walked by it yesterday on my way home from my usual 6-mile walk, and there it was blooming away. But that'll be next week,
okay.
So you'll get a surprise then.
Okay.
But this week, it's this really cool dwarf hydrangea, and it's a hydrangea quercifolia little honey. Quercifolia means leaves that look like oak leaves, and because quercus is oak. And so this little, it only gets about 3.5, no more than 4 feet tall, and probably about that wide. And the leaves turn bright golden. So they come out pretty darn golden colored right away, and then they just turn more and more spectacular gold color all summer long. And the flowers aren't anything to brag about too much. They're all right. They're these little cone flowers. They're only about 6 inches long, but they start white and they turn a real pretty pink. So it's pretty cool. But the best part, and I'm looking at mine out the window right now, and the top part of the leaves tend to stay golden for quite a long time. But in the fall, all the other leaves turn this beautiful crimson and burgundy and all these colors. And the contrast between the two colors is just spectacular, So it's a wonderful plant. It's you're going to hear the cash register ring like crazy when you buy that one. Those are not cheap plants. Oh. But boy, I'll tell you, I love it. There's one problem with them. Figuring out where to put them is hard. I planted mine where people could see it really well and everything, but it was in too much sun, and it got brown spots. It kind of scorched. Mm-hmm. A lot of golden leaf plants do that. So I found that if I planted it where either you could put it in really bright shade and they'll stay nice and gold, or you could put them where they get morning sun till maybe 10 in the morning, something like that. That's perfect. Then they stay bright gold as you can get, and they don't burn up. So if you put them in real heavy shade, they don't stay as golden.
Okay. So that's the plant of the week, Hydrangea Little Honey.
You can see a picture on Ciscoe.com, Ciscoe.
Got to get that plug in there, huh, Ciscoe? Yep. That way
Yeah,
people get.
you betcha.
Because now are your, I know that it's past Christmas, but are your Christmas suggestions still on your website? Or did Mary take them off?
I think, I'm looking at it now, and I'm not seeing that, so
Yeah.
I think she took those off.
Well,
I'm not.
I know my daughter-in-law had a comment. She said those geared loppers are wonderful. She just loves her geared loppers. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
they are.
There were some pretty good suggestions on that list. Well, let's get on to some other questions. But for those people that are listening, we have the Ciscoe Stumper question. What is the only tree on Earth believed to be capable of producing over 1 trillion seeds in its lifetime? I sent my husband an email. He hasn't responded yet to tell me what his input was. But if you have a suggestion, call 360-681-0000 so we can announce it on the air. Okay, this is a Ciscoe. I loved meeting you at Fernie's Nursery years ago. My daughter has a beautiful calathea plant, but recently there were a couple of big holes on it. We were needing your help to know how to get rid of pests naturally if possible, and also how to take care of it in general. This is from Cindy.
Well, Cindy, you picked a difficult plant. So calatheas.
Oh, calathea. Okay.
Yeah, and they're in the same family. People know prayer plant a lot. These are house plants that the leaves actually roll up like they're praying at night when it gets dark out.
Oh, yeah, I've seen those. Yeah.
Yeah, they're really neat. And a lot of these calatheas, their leaves go up and down depending on how much light there is. And a lot of them have really colorful leaves that are just spectacular. The problem is they are tough to grow. Now, holes in the leaves is very unusual. And so I think if you put that calathea outside during the summer sometimes, I think a slug or a snail got in there. There's a snail, a full-grown snail the size of our little fingernail. It got imported here from Asia. And that guy can hide in the hole in the pot, inside the foliage. You don't see it, and it doesn't make much slime. And I suspect something like that, you're going to have to do a really big search on that, see if you could find it. Look under the pot, look everywhere. And, because that's the only thing I can imagine that could be in there doing that to your plant right now that I can think of. Mm-hmm. But just about all of these calatheas, just in the summer, they never like to dry out, so you got to keep the soil evenly moist, but you don't want to drown them. You don't want to saturate the soil, so it's a little tricky. They must have really high humidity. So you got to put in a little fountain next to it, or you got to mist it every morning without fail. If you could put it in the bathroom by a bright light or by the kitchen sink, if there is bright light out there. They can't go below 60 degrees. They just hate that. And they have to have bright light but no direct sunshine. If you can give those things that, it's the humidity that's the problem. And some people even water them only with distilled water, but they're better gardeners than I am.
Well,
that gets expensive.
Yeah, this sounds like a high-maintenance plan. It wouldn't make it in the door at my house, I tell you.
The best one, if you want a calathea easy to grow, get the rattlesnake plant. It's beautiful. I use it in outdoor combinations during the summer, and then I dig them up and bring them in the house in the winter. And those are a little easier than most of the other ones. The other ones, they're tricky.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm making little notes, so if I do decide that I want one, to get a rattlesnake one.
Oh, cool.
Low maintenance. Okay, now, with all the rain that we've been having, some people might be having this issue that Anna and John and Alan have written in, that they have a crisis. They have a huge ceramic pot outdoors that's planted with an evergreen mock orange. Apparently, it is not draining as it has water to the rim after all of this rain. Ooh, that's not good. We can't lift it or move it to get to the bottom. I looked online but found no remedies, just lots of information on prevention. Do I need to lift the plant and shovel it out and start all over with a big layer of rock in the bottom? How can they get this to drain? Obviously, there's a hole in the bottom of the pot, but it must have gotten plugged.
Yeah, when you leave a plant in a pot for a long, long time, and it's probably a beautiful centerpiece, in the pot, and sometimes the roots actually plug up the hole.
Ah.
So sometimes, but sounds like it's time for this thing to get a transplant. Now, it would be nice to be able to wait till spring, but you can't.
No.
If that thing is flooding with water, you're in big trouble. It'll kill that plant so fast. So you got to get it out of there, and boy, can that be hard to do, too.
Yeah.
With a big pot, I take them out on the lawn and lay them down and use a big old pruning saw around the side to try and get it loose, and you can't yank it out by the stem, or you might just rip it right out of the root ball. And but if you can get that out of there, but I wouldn't, if you have a bigger pot, that might be good. If you don't, you could trim the roots. It's all right to trim the roots back, maybe 3 or 4 inches, and then and you probably will trim the roots quite a bit, just trying to get it out of that pot anyway. And then when you repot it, buy some really good potting soil. I always tell people, if you got a good local nursery and they do pots to show how cool they can look and everything, I cheat a lot and go see what the nurseries put together. And sometimes I kind of copy them. And ask them, what's your best potting soil? Buy the best you can get. That's a good way to go. And then when you replant that thing, plant it up, within a ½ inch of the top of the pot. You want every inch you can get. But then, instead of putting stone in the bottom, just put soil all the way. Just fill it with soil. But get yourself some really cool pot feet. So they have these really cool. I've got some that look like pugs.
Oh yeah, I've seen those.
So cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you put the plant up on top of that, because it could be that just if it's a flat bottom pot, it's sitting flat on the concrete or the dirt, and that's stopping drainage too. So, and you should get another 4 or 5 years maybe out of that plant in that pot before you got to go through all this again.
So you don't recommend putting stones in the bottom of a pot? Or sometimes I've heard of people putting those foam nuggets so you don't have the extra weight. What do you think about those?
Yeah, a lot of people do that, and I don't like the foam nuggets, the styrofoam, because one day I was out for a walk and I saw some gardeners, and they were putting the foam nuggets in big pots so that it would lighten them up, and you wouldn't need as much soil and all that. And somebody goofed with the bag, and it was a windy day. Oh la la!
Yeah.
People had foam nuggets for miles.
Yeah.
So we never used those. If we had to lighten a pot at Seattle U, the way we did it, we crushed aluminum cans. And we just pile those up in the bottom and lighten it up, and the soil goes between the cans so the roots can find their way down. But in this case, with this plant that's already getting almost root bound in there probably, my suggestion is don't use anything like that.
Yeah.
Oh, and there's one little addition I could put. No, I'm not going to tell this one because I'm going to use this as a stumper soon.
Oh.
So
You're going to hold back, huh?
I'm going to hold back on this really important thing, but you'll have to listen every week if you want to hear it.
Okay. I like that crushed cans. I like that idea. You are so smart, Ciscoe.
I was just going to say that after hearing that weather forecast, I am ready for a house that smells like a wet dog for at least a week.
That's right. Those dogs come in and they are wet.
Woo-hoo.
Okay, we have had a question. It's recorded, so I do not know what it is about, but this is from Richard, and he has a question for you, Ciscoe. So let's hear it right now. It's 13 minutes to 10. You're tuned to KSQM 91.5.
Good morning, Ciscoe. Richard here, and we are getting ready to plant a pear tree here in Squim, and we would like to know your recommendation of what type of pear would be the most successful. I'll wait your answer, and thank you very much. Bye.
Oh, okay. Hey, Richard, number one, you need 2 pears, or you got to buy a pear that has more than 1 pear on it, because pears absolutely have to have a cross-pollinator to produce good fruit, and they should be within 30 feet of each other. So there's some really great pears out there. But my favorite for our area is called Rescue. So I have a Rescue and a Bosque pear within about 30 feet of each other. And They cross-pollinate spectacularly, and rescue and orchis. That's another one. So I would go with orchis and rescue. So if you can find those, and if you have to, you can go online to find them. And there is I can't think of the name of the nursery I was going to recommend. But so if you go online, you'll find them. And you can get them bare root, and it's just about time to plant bare root trees right now. So I think that's the key. Just so you know, it takes a honeybee has to hit a flower on one pear tree over there, and then hit a flower on your pear tree 30 times to get one piece of fruit. 30 times. So, yeah. And if it were me, I would go with dwarf, not even semi-dwarf. I would go with dwarf pear trees, because even semi-dwarfs end up trying to get 25 feet tall before you know it hits you, and it's so hard to prune them and pick the fruit. If you go with dwarfs, you can keep them 7 or 8 feet tall. Really easy to pick the fruit, easy to prune, and orchis and rescue. Those are my two favorite pears right there.
Okay, so that was a question that was, I guess, called in this morning. I do not know, but that's always have two of them. You can't have just one. Doesn't work.
No, you got to have two or nothing.
Okay, we've had people call in for the Ciscoe Stumper. Mr. Patrick called and said, we talked about, Janice said the cottonwood tree. Then could it be the Chinese dragon tree? That's Kit from Burbank. She called in. I remember getting a question from her a few weeks ago, Kit. And then Charles from Seattle, he called in and said it's a tree from China. So those are the suggestions so far. If you have any ideas, 360-681-0000. And before we went on the air this morning, Ciscoe, we talked about how people could possibly listen to previous broadcasts, and I have an answer.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, cool, huh? Pat had sent in a message. We learned so much from Ciscoe. Thank you for putting him on the air, but it's not always possible to be listening on Saturday mornings. How about rerunning the show sometime during the week so we would have another chance? Well, I was just given the information that past programs are available online. Go to KSQM News on YouTube. Past programs are added weekly. So check back. So I have not tried this myself. This was just handed to me. But for those of you that want to listen to past programs, you can learn. We have great questions every week. So that's something that you can do. Go to KSQM News on YouTube. So maybe I'll try it this week and we can talk about it next Saturday.
Cool. Hey, I'm really happy that.
Yeah.
And I'll test that out and ask Mary to stick that on our website.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Well, right now it's 8 minutes to 10. I can see we're not going to get through all of our questions today, but let's plug away. Hi, Ciscoe. Thanks for all your gardening advice. I'm new at this, and I'm new to the area coming from Southern California. Anyway, I seem to be coming across small white centipedes. They're not millipedes, which I consider harmless. These little boogers are about an inch, and they are definitely centipedes. I live in Port Townsend. How do I eliminate them in a responsible way? The neighbors have wandering cats, and I have 2 cats. Happy New Year, Ciscoe.
Well, I am wondering if what she's seeing, if they're really white, and they wouldn't be an inch long or anything. They're usually, the biggest I've ever seen are a half-inch long. Usually they're a quarter-inch long. They're called symphylans. Symphylans. It's Symphyllans. And so if they are centipedes, if they're an inch long, and they're more red-colored than white, centipedes are actually very beneficial. They eat all kinds of bad bugs. Millipedes are troublemakers. They eat our plants. Centipedes are good guys. They eat bad bugs. They are capable of biting people, but it's so rare. It's unbelievable. I don't think I'd pick up a centipede and play with it in my hand. But otherwise, I've never heard of people getting bit by them, and they're really beneficial. Now, if you have symphylans, you have a problem if you're a vegetable gardener, because they cause so much trouble in vegetable gardens, and they can build up to really high numbers. So if you're finding these in your vegetable garden, some people try flooding their vegetable garden with a ton of water and then let it drain out, and that drowns a lot of them. That can help. The other thing, because there's really no poisons that do any good getting rid of these, the other thing you could do is in spring, before you plant, peel the living tweedle out of your vegetable garden. So, go down as deep as you could dig, turn it over. You're going to crush those guys when you do that. You're also going to get rid of some of the passageways that they use underground to run around. And so you might have to do that like twice. And then, for some reason, maybe for 1 year, plant nothing but potatoes. Because for some reason, symphylans hate potatoes, and they go away if you plant all potatoes in an area. So otherwise, I don't have much good advice, but welcome to the Pacific Northwest.
And if she has questions, she's come to the right place. If she wants advice on, I assume, it doesn't say if it's male or female. I just assumed, but whoever you are, welcome to the Northwest. And by listening to Gardening with Ciscoe, you can learn so much. And so hopefully that'll help them with their little boogers. Okay, let's talk about African violets. My mother used to have African violets, and it was my job to water them. So I kind of strolled down memory lane when I read this one. I heard you rave about African violets on one of your TV appearances. I have 2 of them. They were in bloom when I bought them a year ago, but they've never bloomed again since. Any ideas on what I can do to get them to flower? This is from Rick.
Yeah, Rick, sometimes it takes time before they start blooming again after the first time. First thing you want to do, as soon as the flowers fade, pinch them out, because you don't want these things to think, oh, I raised seed, I don't have to do any more flowering, I've done what I'm on earth for. So that's number 1. Number 2 is only water African violets from below. So get yourself some beautiful pots, a couple of beautiful pots with no drainage holes, and that are just big enough so you could put your African violets in the pot they're in inside those special pots. And what you do is you lift your African violet out and put about an inch of water in the bottom, and you only do that when you lift the pot and it feels really light. So you don't want to overwater them. And then third would be you want to fertilize them. I do mine in the winter about once a month, and I give them high phosphorus, so that's the second number in the 3 numbers on the fertilizer. And you can get special African violet fertilizer. That's easy. You got the right stuff. And then the last thing is that they need pretty bright light. I've got mine in a west window behind some sheer curtains, and it's perfect. They just produce and produce and produce. I mean, they're always in flower, and it's the most beautiful houseplant you can get. And so if you go with that, I think you'll find that they'll do a lot better. My rule of houseplants, and I think you and I have talked about this, Sassy, is that houseplants tell you where they want to go. We don't tell them where they want to go.
Yeah.
So move them around till you find the right light for them. You don't want sun hitting them, but if you could find a really bright spot, if you have to, you can use a grow light.
Yeah.
In the house I lived in before this, I used to cheat. I'd stick them under a grow light. And then when friends were coming, I'd stick them back out around the house. Everybody go, man, every time I come over, your African violets are just blooming away. You know? So, yeah,
Well, I remember when I was growing up, Mother had her African violets on the north, facing the north and the west, behind sheer curtains. But why don't you water them from the top?
If the leaves get wet, that they get fungus really easy.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't mist them either. I never mist them.
Oh, okay. You are just so knowledgeable. You are so smart. And I got a message from my husband, his input for the Ciscoe question, what tree is capable of producing over 1 trillion seeds in its lifetime? He said the bristlecone pine. I couldn't remember that. So that's his input. So if you have a input, call 360-681-0000. Before we go to our next question, let's do a FCC compliant top of the hour station ID.
You're tuned to KSQM 91.5 SQM.
And right now it is straight up 10 o'clock. You are tuned to KSQM, as Rick told you. And this is Gardening with Ciscoe. And we have, like I said, we're not going to get to all of our questions, but here's another one that talks about, I feel bad for Seth. I don't know. He has a crepe myrtle. He planted it 3 years ago. The first year it bloomed well. Last year it budded, but they never opened. And this year he didn't even get any buds. I mean, this is kind of sad, although it did leaf out well. Now, he lives in Tacoma, and the tree gets 10 hours of full sun, and it's planted in good soil. What am I doing wrong, Ciscoe? Do I need to cut it back? It sounds like this tree's on a decline. We need to save it.
Well, I think his crepe myrtle is healthy as can be. I think the problem is that the variety he picked, may be one that needs really hot sunshine in order to bloom.
Yeah.
Some crepe myrtles are they're so reticent to bloom that it drives you nuts. And so I wouldn't give up yet, but I've had crepe myrtles, and I wait all summer because they don't bloom till fall here because, down south they bloom in like July, or even June sometimes, but they got so much more heat. And you always plant your crepe myrtle in the hottest, sunniest spot you got. And some years, with some I've had, you wait and you wait. Finally in October they form buds. You're all set for them to open up, and then we get a little cold snap, and it goes, forget it, and the buds just fall off. So usually when I have a plant that does that, I rip it out by the ears and find one. I go to the nursery and go, hey, I want one that's known to bloom well here, and there's quite a few good ones. And they're wonderful trees. They have exfoliating bark that is just beautiful, kind of patchy white and gray, really beautiful. Most of them don't get too big, and the flowers are to die for on those things, and they come in fall when nothing in your garden is blooming except for those doggone Japanese anemones, but nothing else. So pretty cool. I'll tell you, they're great trees. So don't give up, but you might give it another year if it doesn't bloom and we have a good summer. If we got a lousy summer, you're not going to get any blooms on half the crepe myrtles out there. But it's worth it anyway.
So Seth is going to have to keep us posted because we're going to be on the air forever, right? Right, Ciscoe?
You betcha. You betcha. I want to hear if that thing blooms next fall. Plants, as we mentioned on this show, plants that are trapped in nursery pots, sometimes they're it's not the nursery's fault. They're taking as good care as they can of them, but they can't keep potting them up into bigger pots all the time, so they can get pretty root bound. The plant thinks it's going to die. It feels like it has to reproduce. So a lot of times when you buy a plant at the nursery, it's in bloom because the plant thinks it's going to die. You bring it home, plant it in great soil and everything. It could take a few years before the plant decides, okay, I'll go ahead and put that energy into blooming instead of growing good roots. So it could be just that, but I don't think so with a
Yeah.
crepe.
Well, I hear the phone ringing, so people are probably calling in because they want to get their vote in about what tree on Earth is capable of producing over 1 trillion seeds in its lifetime. So 360-681-0000. Okay, here I'm having to prioritize here. So this Judy. She wished us a happy new year, and she wants some advice on the best time of year to prune a mature Japanese maple. Many arborists are booked through February. The earliest I can get someone out to prune is the week of February 22nd. Is that too late? What would you consider the latest date to safely prune a Japanese maple? As I understand, the objective is to prune while the tree is dormant, after the danger of frost has passed and before the sap starts running. Is that correct? Thank you for any and all advice on this topic. So how can we help Judy with her Japanese maple tree?
Judy, you had everything right except for one thing, and that is right now would be perfect time. Once the leaves fall off, anytime it's not freezing, you can prune. If it freezes the next day, no problem. So if you can talk somebody into coming sooner than later, that'd be better, because that date is pretty late on pruning that Japanese maple.
Yeah.
I think it'll be okay, but you're going to get a lot of sap running. That's the only problem, because it's possible it's going to have broke dormancy by then and start to grow. You're right on the cusp. If you can't get anybody before that, I think you're still okay then. But no later than the end of February, no matter what. Mid-February would be better.
So she needs to book them now.
Book them now.
Book
and
'em
see
now.
if you can find somebody, that might just do you a favor, come do it right away, and get that Japanese maple pruned soon.
Yeah. Because now, if you prune it and it freezes the next day, it's okay, you said?
Yep. Yeah, as long you just don't want to prune any plant while it's freezing out.
Oh, the day that you cut it, it can't be freezing, but it can freeze the next day. Huh.
Yep. No problem at all.
Oh, okay. Well, all right. So let's see what else. Here's a blueberry bush question. I have a blueberry bush that was sprayed with a fence stain when my neighbor painted his fence. It didn't kill the bush, and I'm wanting to know how to get it ready for the next season. More than half the leaves have paint speckles on them. Do I leave them, or should I prune them off over the next couple of years so that all the sprayed leaves are removed before I eat any fruit? Also, the bark mulch that I have down was also sprayed. Should I remove that? I'm worried about it impacting the soil as I'm trying to follow organic gardening practices. This is from Craig.
Oh, Craig. Well, here's the problem. Depends on what the stain is. So maybe if you could find out what stain your neighbor used. Some have long-lasting toxicities that could get picked up. If it's in the soil, on the leaves, it could get picked up by that blueberry. And just cutting the leaves off, I'm not sure that's going to solve the problem, especially if it's soaked through the mulch and into the ground. If it were me, and I hate to tell you this, I think I would probably go, well, I hate to do it, but this blueberry, maybe it needs to go to the yard waste, and plant something non-edible, and that's along that fence, and find another spot for any edible plants. That's tough, but that's a good reminder to everyone that, if you're going to spray a stain on a fence or something, you want to do it real careful. If there's any edible plants there, and even plants that aren't edible could be harmed, but and maybe put plastic over the ground, over a large area of the ground near anything edible, something like that, and cover the plant But yeah, I don't think I'd keep that blueberry if it were me.
Okay, well, this question was just handed to me. We're going to wrap this up, and then you can give your answer to the Ciscoe Stumper question. Rose just called in. What is a good dwarfed apple tree to plant behind her church? Maybe a Honeycrisp?
Well, I've never tried to grow. I love Honeycrisp.
I know, they're
In fact,
so good.
I had one this morning for breakfast. But I've never tried to grow one here, so I don't know enough about it to advise you on a Honeycrisp. But the WSU Extension has a list of, and also RainTreeNursery.com. They're a great bare root mail order nursery. So you could go to something like that and just go through their catalog and see which are the disease-resistant apples that sound good. So Liberty is really a famous one. Oh, geez, I haven't thought of these for a while. There's a whole bunch of ones listed, and you want to go to that list to get one of those ones that they've got on there, because those are great apples, and you'll never have to spray them for disease. You'll still have to fight the apple maggot and the codling moth that get in the fruit, but you don't want to be spraying chemicals every year to keep the apple scab from ruining all your fruit and things. So go to one of those two sites. I think there's a link at Ciscoe.com to Raintree Nursery.
Okay.
And, check it out.
All right. Well, it's 10 minutes past 10. I want to give a little kudo to you. We got a picture from Amy. We love you. When my now 17-year-old was just a toddler, they sent us a picture of you holding him at the Northwest Garden Show while signing your book. Yes.
That was a long time ago. I look like a toddler in that picture, too.
Oh, but we love to hear from all the listeners. Well,
that was wonderful.
Some of the questions that that are going to be at the top of the list next week are from Stephanie about her fruit plants, and we're going to be talking about some questions that people sent in about their lawns and when sweet peas can be planted. So let's those will be at the front of the list. But the input that we've gotten for the Stumper question, Peggy called from BC to call with the answer to Ciscoe Stumper. She said a pinyon pine. She used to live down in the southwest of the United States and has fond memories of living there. And then we had the cottonwood tree, we had the Chinese dragon tree, we had a tree from China, we had, my husband said, a bristlecone pine. So what is the answer to the Ciscoe Stumper question?
Okay, it's the biggest tree on Earth in volume, and it's the giant sequoia.
The sequoia. Oh, my gosh. Okay.
A full-grown giant sequoia, there's the, General Sherman is the famous biggest one of all, and it's 275 feet tall, 106 feet wide, has a 36-inch diameter. But here's the thing about giant sequoias: they never stop growing.
Oh.
So when there are most of the ones in California in the groves, the oldest ones are over 3,500 years old, and they grow just as fast as one that's 35 years old. They never stop growing in their lifetime.
Wow.
And the only thing they know of that kills them is if they're hit by lightning strikes. So each mature giant sequoia has 10,000 on average, over 10,000 woody cones that are about the size of an egg. Each cone holds over 200 seeds, and so every year they produce 10,000 of those. And so if you do the math, if they could grow 4,000 years times however the heck many seeds come out of those 10,000, they can create they can have a pretty big family. Let's put
Yeah.
it that way.
Huh.
Think if all trillion of those seedlings start to grow. My gosh, how would you feed the kids? I mean, it would be like.
Oh, Ciscoe. Yep, the sequoia crossed my mind, but I thought, nah, that's not a possibility. But you are such a fount of knowledge. Well, right now it's 14 minutes past 10. I think it's time for us to wrap this up. How about if we do this again next Saturday? Same bat time, same bat station, huh?
I can't wait.
Okay, you have a great weekend, and I am going to go ahead and say goodbye to you, Ciscoe, and then I'm going to give the local weather observations. And so we'll see you next Saturday, Ciscoe. Take care.
Okay, bye, Sassy. Bye, everyone. See you next week.
Bye-bye.